Thank you very much, Dr. Joy, Tira. Now, they focus on hybridity. And when he first talked about hybridity, I said, well, I drive a hybrid car. But he says, no, it's not about the car. It's about the challenge of really reaching out and understanding and reaching out the people who have come from mixed cultures. And how do we effectively reach the hybrid? And so I thank God for this opportunity that He has given me to give some opening remarks and opening message in relation to this. Now, this is really preaching to the choir. In fact, you have more prepared. And the good about the keynote is you just turn on the key and then you discuss. Okay? But let me just share with you some thoughts that I have in relation to this topic on hybridity, and just to continue to and give you some challenge for your discussion in the next few days. So first of which, I want to say that it is God who determined the geopolitical boundaries. It was God who made me to become a Filipino. It was God who made many of you coming from different countries. How many countries? 13 countries represented here? 19 countries represented here. It was God who determined in Acts chapter 17, verse 26, He made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. So from one man and one woman, Adam and Eve, there is that multiplication of all of these people all over the world. But it was God who determined when will be our generation. And it was God who determined what will be our nationality and our geopolitical boundaries. In fact, in Deuteronomy chapter 32, when we are called to worship the Lord, and they are reminded that when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when He divided mankind, He fixed the borders of the peoples according to the numbers of the sons. ESB would say sons of God, but the Masoretic text, according to Dr. Xiao, is sons of Israel. But what we see here, it is the Lord God who determined our boundaries. And I want us to see that, I appreciate me being a Filipino. And I do not complain that I am a Filipino. I rejoice that I am a Filipino. In the same way that all of you rejoice at your respective nationalities. Because that is part of the design that God has given us. That we belong to a certain geopolitical engagement and identity. However, migration has changed the landscape of human habitation. And you have how many sessions? 12 sessions to be discussing all of these issues, and 3 devotions about hybridity in the Bible. Migration. And let me just share with you, and I think we all know that there are different causes of migration. So without belaboring, I would say that these are some of them. Environmental, because of either natural calamities, natural disasters, or the search for better climate. Some people have to migrate. In fact, some people would have their homes in the northern hemisphere, but will fly south during winter because of climate issue. But some of us are more accustomed to temperate climate like the Philippines, and we enjoy living in the Philippines. And some of you would feel enjoying shoveling snow. I did that for at least 2 winters, but I said that's enough. It's good to enjoy only for visiting. But so environmental factor, particularly calamities and natural disasters, would be a major cause for migration. And another major cause is economic cause or factor for migration. So many Filipinos are now moving into Canada, but not only Filipinos. I think Canada is the most, has made that policy of migration, being competitive, trying to make sure that in order to arrest the negative birth rate that they have, because if they did not open to migration, they will be extinct because they are having negative growth rate. And so they open migration to professionals because they want to make sure that there are enough people who will support the social security of those who are retiring. Is right? That's part of demography, but economic considerations. But it's actually, and some of these people are voluntarily migrating, but there are also others down history who were forcibly migrated for economic reasons. And I hope you, when you begin to discuss particularly people who were descendants of those who were taken as slaves from Africa to be brought to the Northern Hemisphere, I think that's an issue to understand when it comes to hybridity and understand how these people are reacting. I cannot identify with them because I've not had that experience. But I think it's important that as a church, we need to understand that dynamics of those people who come out from forcibly, being forced out of their situation for economic considerations. The slave trade should be considered as factor to discuss in terms of what happened to the dynamics of the people, to the psyche of the people who came from that background. Cultural migration, particularly when it comes to religious freedom as well as education. We know that people had to, America was built by people who were coming out of persecution and would like to really have their own religious expression. But now we have many students who go to different countries. And what's the percentage of students who come back after they study in America? Leighton?
For the Chinese, about 80%. For the Chinese, which is the number one sending to the U.S. There are about 5 billion international students today around the world, many in the Philippines, and they're projected to 8 million by 2025.
Okay, so you can share those statistics. But my question is, how many foreign students return to their country of origin after they study?
The majority, either immediately after graduation or maybe a few years in their host countries, but then many of them do finally go back home later. So what was formerly a brain drain has become a brain gain eventually.
Okay, so the statistics is now being reversed because it used to be that there was about 90% who stay in the country where they are having their studies. But I'm glad to see that the statistics is being reversed. That there are more who are coming back to their country of origin. Okay, I'm one of those few who return to the Philippines immediately. Cultural, and then political. So, can you imagine the people who currently are on the refugees around the world? There are about 65 million refugees around the world today. It's not only the several million coming out of Syria and the conflict there, but all over the world, there's about 65 million refugees brought about by civil war or escaping from political persecution that brought about migration. And then the social consideration, moving for better quality of life, or moving closer to a family member or friend. I think that's one of the marker for migration for Canada. If you are a professional, if your profession is on demand, and if you have good family connections in Canada, then you come up to the great level, because they used to say there's a great opportunity of you having that family support while you are there. So as I've said, migration has changed the landscape of human habitation. Now, the results of this migration actually gave rise to hybridity. And what are some of the results of migration? The first result would be, well, there's the changes of population distribution. So the migration contributed to the development of separate cultures as well as diffusion of cultures and the mix, cultural mix, or there is that multicultural populations. I think in America, when I was interacting with Ray Bakke back in the 80s, he was one of those who began to discuss about this migration and this cities movement. And he talks about in his area during the time in Chicago, how many square kilometers, there are 52 different ethnic groups or cultures right within his own neighborhood. And I think all over the world you would see that kind of multiplicity and the cultural mix that we see in terms of the population. So it's not anymore just when you talk of America, the Native Americans are the Indians, and all of them are actually migrants. So even President Trump is a migrant. Anyway, yeah. Do you? He's a migrant also. Okay, I will not go deeper. Then there is the mixing of different cultures and races. And this mixing often led to negative social behaviors as well as tensions between the majority population and the minority population in that country. So when you have like apartheid in South Africa, or we will have the racial divide in different countries up to now. So the tension is even there. So all of this divide between the majority and the minority population in the country would have those local struggles, racial discrimination, and so those racial tensions is what we see. And then there is the mixing of different cultures of races. There is also, I would say, while there is that negative, but there's also that positive aspects of cultural migration, because you are enriching the culture as well as the community in terms of the experience and new knowledge that are being contributed for the migrants that are coming in that particular area. And then we have also the demographic consequences of migration, because in many cases, migration is selective in terms of age group, because it's mostly the migrants who are mostly young and productive who are migrating. Today, there's about more than 10 million Filipinos who are working in different countries around the world. And if you look at the different society, we have those kind of younger generation. And I'm going back to Canada because they have always asked me if you want to apply for Canada migration. I said, no, I'm staying here in the Philippines. But I can visit Canada when I want to. Okay. So there's population aging in some countries as the younger generation have to go and look for better opportunities in different countries. So, and then the last is the economic results. I think both from the country that, for the Philippines, we are encouraging this overseas Filipino workers because they are one of the, in terms of the gross domestic product of the country is the remittances. About more than $20 billion are being remitted by the overseas Filipino workers. So there's economic results, although I would say also that there is socio-economic negative impact also of separation of homes and dysfunctional families. But those that have migrated in other countries, they also have contributed to the economic development. So all of these results of migration actually would say gave rise to the hybrids, because the migrants need to cope in their new environment. The hybrids need to know how to be able to handle the situation. Because to become, you need to be able to, in some of those countries, being bilingual has greater advantage rather than just being monocultural or being speaking only one language. And therefore, the rise of the hybrids is brought about, being forced by the need for coping in the different mix of culture. I did not attempt to make a definition of hybridity. That's a discussion that you have. And you have already definitions from different papers that have been presented, the dissertation of Juliet. So you have already the definition. So what I use here is just the common definition, first from biology. So animals or plants, different breeds, varieties. This is actually a dictionary definition. So by genetic engineering or intervention, there is that hybrid. And normally, the hybrid are better crop or better animal. But the problem with that is they cannot continue to reproduce because they have to be dependent on that kind of production of hybrid seed or hybrid animal. Then, in terms of culture, there's the person or group of persons produced by the interaction of crossbreeding of two unlike cultures, traditions, and others. Technically, on technical definition, something that is powered by more than one source of power, like I'm driving a hybrid car. Okay, so to have cheaper gasoline, but actually, what you save in terms of cheaper gasoline, you pay for the higher price of that car. Okay, but I did not buy that car; it was given to me, and I enjoy it. Okay. So having said that, I'd like to focus on the purpose of this consultation. The purpose of this consultation, why are you here? You are here to discover the implications of hybridity in the mission of God. That's why you have those 12 sessions. And Dr. Joy said that, yes, you are all participants, and we need to discuss, and we need to interact. We need to be able to say we contribute to the enrichment of the discussion as well as the input and understanding. And hopefully you can define better strategy and sharpen strategies in how to really reach and minister to this group of people that we call hybrid. So let me focus on handling the issues, on some of the issues and concerns on hybridity. And I have at least 5 that I want to share tonight. Number 1 is that the hybrids have confused and conflicting identities. We need to be able to minister to them, care for them, because they are living in multiple cultures. They have various background and values, and sometimes, am I a Filipino or am I an American? And you have that discussion of being a coconut or being a banana. But sometimes the problem of these migrants or this hybrid, because they say, no, I am an American. I'm holder of an American passport. I go to American school, but when they go home, they are being asked to speak their native language or to have to behave as if they are still living in India, or they are still living in the Philippines, or they are still living in Korea. So sometimes these conflicting identities and values is a challenge for this hybrid. The second issue and concern on hybridity is their vulnerability to predators and negative influences. They go to school and sometimes they are said, you are Asian. Somebody just sent me that post on the Filipino family who was buying grocery. And this is just the other day, buying grocery, and somebody behind her was a Caucasian who says, "Oh, buy all our foods." How many of you have seen that? Yeah, you buy all our food, you buy all our. If I was there, like I said, you also come from a different country, right? But it's good that that person did not take did not challenge that person who was so racist. So, but sometimes the hybrids can fall prey to the drug people or to the violence because, first of all, they were having some confusion on their identity, on their values, and then they become vulnerable. And if we don't help them, if we don't reach out to them, then they will just look for people who will give attention and care for them, and it could be the negative influence. The third issue is that the hybrids have that sense of openness and responsiveness to right stimulus. To those who will care and understand them, they will open up. They are having a problem when in their home, they says, "You behave like we used to behave," as the parents having their own sets of values and culture. When they are in school or when they are playing with their peers or their people, then they are they have to live with different set of culture and values. And therefore, sometimes in the time of confusion and this time of looking for their identity, those who understand them, those who care for them are the ones who could minister to them. And they will be open and they will accept and they will say, "My parents do not understand me, but you understand me." And therefore, it's important for us to say there is that there is that window of openness and responsiveness if we give them that right stimulus. The fourth is that, the fourth issue and concern is that the hybrids possesses great potential to excel. Why? They can harness the strength of the best of both worlds. That sometimes the Asian students actually excel in the United States. Is that true, Ate Lisa? Yeah. The Asian students make good in the United States. And sometimes the businessmen actually are also making good in the Western context. Why? Because first, in their coping mechanism, in order to say, I belong, they try to excel and they try to accept their best effort, but yet they can also draw some of the best, as I've said, they can harness the best of both worlds. The Western world and the Oriental world, and they can harness that and they can really excel, right? And therefore, if we minister to them, these are some of the best people who could actually be used by God in the ministry and whatever area or even in professional development. And finally, let me end by saying that this is the great challenge, and that is the neglect of the church in effectively addressing their situation. We have a conflict of an ethnic churches versus the multicultural generation. Some of the problems that I have seen are some of young people. I visit so many ethnic churches in the U.S. as well as in other countries, and when they have their own worship, it's trying to still preserve their ethnicity as a church, and it's important, especially for the adults, because that's their identity. Whenever I go to a Filipino church in America, they always end up having a lunch potluck or something together. And some people would go more for the potluck rather than the worship, right? And that's not only I think that's true for most Asians. But their children says, I don't belong here. The activities in the church are still so focused on that ethnicity that the children says, well, if I'm in school, I have a Western mindset, I have a Western values. When I'm in the church, they are trying to force me back again to that mindset. But during the week, I'm exposed to the different sets of values and standards and culture. Therefore, even as a church, we need to be able to say that we can address properly and effectively care for the hybrids in the churches, particularly the second and third generation. So let me end by saying that we can learn from two examples. Two biblical examples that I would use to end. And that is, first, Mother Mary to the baby and adolescent Jesus. When you read Luke chapter 2, we see here how Mother Mary, really took care of the hybrid. Who is that hybrid? Jesus. In the one person of Christ, there are two natures, the divine and the human. And you can really see there the dynamic of Jesus being a hybrid. So that when Jesus was born, he was born in the manger, and then the shepherds came. And Joseph maybe and the others could not understand, he was born in the manger, but some of the people who visited are some of the wise men from the east, and now here's the shepherds who were glorifying and praising God. You know what Mary said? After hearing what the shepherds said about Christ and how people are recognizing Christ and how the angels declared that unto you this day is born in the city of David the Savior who is Christ the Lord, Mary treasured up all these things, pondering them in her heart. She was saying, how do I handle this? How do I handle this tension? How do I prepare this child so that that child will grow up to be a person who will be able to express true incarnation and fulfill the divine role and ministry that he has? How do I understand that here it is that this person, this baby, is both God 100% and human 100%. So Mary treasured up all these things in her heart. Now came during the time of the adolescence of Jesus, later on, a few verses after that, that when Jesus had his bar mitzvah at 12 years old, he brought them to the temple, and Jesus stayed at the temple. And for 3 days, they were looking for him. And when they saw the boy Jesus there at the temple, talking with the priests, talking with the leaders, what was Jesus, Mary said, "Son, why have you treated us so? We were practically looking for you. We were worried about you." What was the response of Jesus? "Didn't you know that I have to be in my Father's business?" How do Mary respond to such a hybrid? So the response is that, and his mom, and Jesus went to them and was submissive to them, going back to Nazareth, and his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. There's so much reflection that she had to do on how to handle this hybrid, how to respond to him, how to help him so that he will not be somebody who will be an outcast in the community, but somebody who has good relationship. That's why in verse 52, you notice the summary statement of 18 years of the life of Jesus. 18 years because he was 12 years old when this happened, and the next verse after that is when he was already 30 years old. But that 18 years is encapsulated in that verse. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. And that was preceded by that thought that Mary treasured all these things in her heart. That for the next 18 years, Mary was able to nurture, care for, and love that baby, that adolescent, that young man, so that when he began his ministry at age 30, there was so much input from Mary to the growth and increase of the wisdom, stature, as well as social engagement and spiritual development of this man, infinite man, Jesus. There's so much reflection about how to deal with hybrid. The other one is my favorite apostle, the Apostle Paul. You see how he adopted Timothy. When he recruited Timothy as a young man to join them in the ministry, now he had to circumcise him. Why? Because he is a hybrid. His father is a Greek, and his mother and grandmother are Jewish people. And that Paul had to make a decision. I had to circumcise him to please the Jewish people. But you see there the dynamics of how he had to handle this hybrid Timothy. But you know, how was Paul able to minister to Timothy? How was Paul able to really help him to become a great minister and servant of the Lord? The last two letters of the Apostle Paul was devoted to his son. And so how did he call him? To Timothy, my true child in the faith. If we want to be able to be effective in ministering and caring for the hybrid, we need to look at them with that same care, love, and acceptance that we are willing to say, you become my son, you become my child. That's what Apostle Paul did to his son, to Timothy, in order that Timothy will become effective as a hybrid. He said in 2 Timothy 1:2, to Timothy, my beloved child. And so as you discuss this issue about hybridity for the mission of God, then it's important for us to learn from these two examples that I had. From Mary, who took care of Jesus, and from Paul, who took care of Timothy. Now let me end by asking you giving you two questions that you can have in this consultation. First question is, how will the church effectively address the challenges and opportunities of hybridity for global mission? As you have all of these sessions, as you have all of this discussion, maybe the underlying question that you need to have is, what does it mean for me as a missiologist, as a church leader, as a pastor, as a minister? How will the church effectively address these challenges and opportunities? So both the challenges and opportunities of hybridity. And then after you discuss that, then you also ask the second question, what basic strategies do we need to develop to reach the hybrids for Jesus? May you have a good consultation. God bless you. Thank you very much, Dr. Joy, Tira. Now,